All right. Well, good morning, Rotary District 7770, and welcome to Conversations with Rotary Action People for Monday, January 24th. Can y'all believe almost the first month of the year is already gone? I am Donald Hovis. I am your CWRAP host, and I'm from the Chicora Rotary Club in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I would like to give a special shout out, as I do every Monday. Thank you to Mary Gass from the 5 Points Rotary Club, who sets up our wonderful speakers. And with that being said, we are in need of speakers. So if you know a speaker or have had a speaker at your Rotary Club that we think we would all benefit from hearing from on CWRAP, please get in touch with Mary so we can get them scheduled. I believe right now we're booking February and beyond. Mary is also going to conduct today's presentation after I go over a few announcements. So thank you, Mary, for doing that. All right, so in the chat box, we've got a nice little crowd in here today, so thank you for being here. I will say our programs are about 30 minutes long. Today is going to be like a question and answer session. So if you have a question, simply use the raise hand function. Now, if you're out there and you're saying, I don't know how to raise my hand, I mean raise your hand in Zoom, not literally go raise your hand, okay? You go to the reactions thing along the bottom of your Zoom taskbar, and there is a raise hand option there. Now, just like Lou Mello has done on his screen. Now, if you do raise your hand and I call on you, you've got to lower your hand. You do it by the same way. So if you do have a question throughout TC's presentation, please raise your hand using the reactions. Also, in the chat box, please put some of you have already done it. There may be a penalty in the future for people that respond early to the chat because you don't know what I'm going to ask. I usually ask a question, try to get to know people. So here we go. Your name, your Rotary Club, and answer these two questions. Did you get snow? Did you get ice? And did you enjoy it? And question number 2, we were just talking about before we started. Did your team win? Did your team lose? And who are you pulling for going forward since it's down to the Final Four in the NFL? All right, Mary, over to you.
Yep, I got you. I'm ready. TC, you ready?
I am.
Good. Our speaker this morning is TC Kay, who was born in Bangor, Maine. She has her BA, MA, and JD. Very well educated. She moved to Pemberton, New Jersey in 1985 and became the first elected mayor and served from 1991 to 2003. She's former president of the New Jersey Conference of Mayors, a former vice president of New Jersey League of Municipalities, legislative chair and Mayor's Conference Center, chairman of Pinelands Municipal Council, and open public records specialist. While in Pemberton, she and her husband were the first couple to join the Pemberton Rotary Club. And in September of 2014, they moved to Columbia. She and Michael moved to Columbia and transferred their membership to the Lake Murray Irmo Club. She has a daughter. They have a daughter, Anne, and grandchildren, Sydney, who is joining us today. Sydney, is it Sydney Reese, Emma Sue, and Michael? Yes. TC is a COVID survivor and has agreed to share her story with us today. And she is not opposed to answering questions. So she's very open about this. So please, if you have a question and you don't want to wait until after the presentation, as Donald said, raise your hand and she'll be happy to answer. Donald and I will monitor this and be sure to let you get your questions in. So TC, I'm going to start with asking you a very simple question. How did you know you had COVID, and when, after you found out, were you hospitalized?
Okay. I actually never found out that I had COVID. What happened was February 4th, I was eligible to get the first shot of the Pfizer vaccine. So I went to Richland, got it, scheduled the next one 21 days out. Because Michael, because of his age and his profession, he's a dentist, he already had his shots. So I was all set to go. And then all of a sudden I started developing a runny nose and a little bit of a cough. And I thought, well, maybe it's because of the shot or something else. So of course we have the portal where you can turn around and email your physician. And I emailed Dr. Stuck and told her my symptoms. And she said, don't worry, it's probably something seasonal. You don't have to worry about it. Everything's fine. Well, on the night of February 14th, which happens to be my daughter's birthday, I woke Michael up at 1:30 and told him I could not breathe. He told me my oxygenation level was down to 40. And he started compressions and he had called 911. Well, luckily where we live right off of Lake Murray Boulevard, everybody can be at my house in 5 minutes. So of course, you know, they did. And the last thing I remember is sitting in my easy chair and the tall young man came up and said to me, you're having problems breathing. And that's all I remember. So I have to kind of listen to what other people tell me happened as along, sort of like hearsay evidence. Michael said I got up from my chair, got out, walked out of the house, got on the gurney myself and went into the ambulance. And he thought for sure, I'm going to Richland because of course it's right down Lake Murray Boulevard. No, they decided to go to Lexington Medical. And Michael tells the story that they drove 86 miles an hour down 26. And he followed them. And he got there, got out, of course, called my daughter who lived right down the street from us. And Emma Sue was home and Sydney was in Kentucky. And so everybody was alerted that I was being rushed to the hospital. And everyone assumed that I was having a heart or chest attack of some sort. Nobody thought COVID. Even the ER, they said, didn't think COVID. It was later on that they discovered through testing that, yes, I had COVID. Well, I'm all attached, I guess, to this machinery and everything like that. So 1:30, they come to the house, or a little after that, and 5:30 in the morning, the nurse comes out and tells my husband that I'm dead. I'm gone. That's it. And you know, when he said, when he heard she's gone, he kind of laughs now and says, well, where did she go? You know, kind of thing. And then he had a presence enough to say, can I see her? And in the meantime, Emma Sue, our other granddaughter, she had collapsed watching all of this going on in the emergency room. And they had to code yellow her and put her in the emergency room because she, you know, kept reacting. In other words, she's not going to be the doctor in the family. And so we turned around and Michael came in and he said, you know, I was all attached because I'm an organ donor. And he's got very strong hands because he does a lot of oral surgery and implants and everything. And he grabbed my right arm and he told me he loved me. And he just kept saying, I love you, I love you. And the hallmark moment is that all of a sudden the nurse said, we have a pulse. And they said, if she goes again, we won't resuscitate her because, you know, we've had to do that a couple of times. So if she goes again, that will be it. But from then on, I just kept fighting. I don't know why, whatever it is, but I guess the last thing you lose is, Michael tells me, is your hearing. So, I mean, I was able to hear him. And I always joke about the fact that he doesn't like casseroles. And you know the old joke about as soon as a guy becomes a widower, all the casseroles start coming. And of course, Michael doesn't like casseroles. So I saved him from a fate worse than death. But anyway, so I don't remember anything at all. I know that they intubated me. My voice still, when I talk a lot or anything like that, you can hear it gets tired and everything like that because it's taking time to repair the muscles that are there. And I have seen an ear, nose, and throat specialist to help me recover from that. But in the meantime, they also, of course, had me on oxygen. They did a CPAC. I had to start dialysis because my kidneys were failing. There wasn't anything that was working. And every day, Michael would call and the nurses would tell him that it's fine, we're working on it and everything like that. And then on the other side of the coin, they were telling my daughter when she took in that you might as well get ready for this. You've got to know that when your mother goes, you're going to have to be there for your father. You know that because we don't think she's going to make it. In fact, Sydney can tell you the story that the cardiologist that I had actually put a note in the chart that said, I don't think the patient's heart is strong enough to make it through the night. And now when I go to see my cardiologist, because I have him now as a doctor, he hugs and kisses me because so many people didn't make it. And I guess I'm just naturally a born fighter. I mean, and probably that first COVID shot was building antibodies and helping me resist all of these problems. But I did have the immunization, the plasma that has the antibodies in it. I had several of those. I had blood transfusions. I will tell you the worst thing that I probably faced because I remember when they took the tube out, that was fun, was the dialysis, because it was hours and hours and hours of sitting still. And, every time it had to be done, which was like every other day, I had a different tech and a different piece of equipment and just couldn't get used to it. And it was torture. It really was torture. And, and they would say to me, you've got to help yourself. If you don't help yourself, if you don't roll over and hold on to that bed, and everything like that, if you don't help yourself, we can't help you. And I mean, so there was a lot of caring but also a lot of demanding that I take part in what was going on. But I remember one night I was so cold, I couldn't regulate my temperature. I would either be very hot or I would be very cold. And one night I was very cold and I had a wonderful nurse. In the beginning, they don't leave you alone 24/7. You have a nurse. And he turned around and actually put hot water in gloves and put the gloves under my hands and held my hands all night. I don't mean to cry, but when somebody turns around and does that for you and prays for you, it's wonderful. And of course, I got to be a little bit of a PIA patient. I didn't like the fact that they kept taking blood pressure in both my arms. So it was constantly going on and off, and I was demanding that they take it off and everything like that. And finally, the head doctor came in and said, I can't handle this. We don't have the staff to come in and do this. We can't do it manually. We've got to let the machines do it. I said, I don't understand why you can't do it this way. He said, because I don't have time. I have to go next door and help a man die. Well, that makes you realize that, you're not very important. And it's really sad that that has to happen. But my family was so supportive through the whole thing because, of course, they couldn't see me. And of course, Sydney used to call from Kentucky because that was where she was working as a athletic trainer. And she'd tell the nurses, just put the phone next to my noni and she can hear me every day. And she called every day. And I must have heard her because it was really important that somebody stayed in touch with me. And I remember I had enough strength one day that I took my cell phone, and every member of my family has emoji. My husband is a tooth. Sydney, well, when they're winning, she's an eagle. And then when they're not, she's an owl. But everybody, and my daughter is a smiley face. And that's all I said to my daughter one day was a heart and a smiley face. And she said that is the best text message she ever received. So needless to say, I finally got to the point, and of course I went from the most expensive room in the hospital. I knew I was getting better because as things got better, I went to the Motel 6, the rooms that were built in the 60s. Yeah, they were small and tight, but it was still, the staff was fabulous. It didn't make any difference where you were. The staff was superb at Lexington Medical. And I had absolutely wonderful care. And in fact, Trip Jones, who's a member of our Rotary Club, is the head of the board of directors for the hospital. And he told Sydney when we were having breakfast one morning, I checked on your grandmother every day. So, I mean, you know, it was there and we were fine. So finally, I got to the point where they told me that I could get ready to go to rehab. In the meantime, I started having some hallucinations, like I would see animals walking around the widescreen of my TV that was in my room and stuff like that. And I had a terrible fear of sleeping. At night, I just could not close my eyes and go to sleep. In fact, the first night that I had it, I actually put on classic country and Western music. And I sat and listened to it all night because I was just so afraid to close my eyes and go to sleep. And that's one of the things that COVID does is it psychologically tries to destroy you because it just plays games with you. You just don't know what's happening. And the doctors and nurses can't always tell you either. I mean, from when I had COVID in February of 2021, it's changed tremendously. I mean, I feel fortunate to have it if I had to have it then, because the time before, people were dying because you didn't have any idea. You were just experimenting. Let's try this and see if it works. Let's try this. So Dr. Hewitt was my cardiologist, and I now see him because one of the side effects that I have is what's called a COVID heart. I went on Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, I was back in the emergency room again because I had started to retain fluid and I was swollen and things were just not good. And Sydney took me to the emergency room and waited for Michael to get there from the office. And that's where we spent until about 2 a.m. when they said, no, what's happening is your blood pressure is high, you've got too much fluid, all this sort of stuff has to work. And we realized that this is an effective COVID. And the reason they started calling it COVID heart was the fact that especially women start to show all the signs and ramifications of having a real heart trouble. So when they would die, it was like that they were having a heart incident, not a COVID related incident. And so another thing that I had was alopecia, which is COVID hair loss. I had shoulder length hair that you could put up or braid or, you know, anything like that. But 2 things that when Michael and I got married, he made me promise: 1, I wouldn't cut my hair, and 2, I wouldn't have an affair. Well, I've managed to keep away from the affair, but with the alopecia, COVID hair, you turn around and it's like someone who's had chemotherapy and your hair all falls out. And there's nothing like combing your hair and just see gobs of it and gobs of it. And so, you know, that's been a struggle to get that to grow. And as you can see, I am getting back thanks to the dermatologist and my beautician. In fact, it was really funny. She said that she's seen a lot of people with COVID hair. It just happens to be another side effect of having COVID. Well, I made it to NHC Healthcare, which is like almost right across the street from Lexington Medical. And it's a fabulous facility and wonderful occupational and physical therapists, good food, good Southern food, you know, and everything like that. And I had to learn how to walk. I had to actually learn how to hold myself up on a walker because, of course, having spent all the time I had in the hospital, I went from drinking 100 ounces of water a day to no ounces of water a day, and going from walking anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 steps a day to I can't get out of the bed and stand on my own 2 feet because literally my muscles had atrophied. And of course, you have to be able to walk to go to rehab. Well, I had a social worker that didn't quite understand that maybe compassion might be nice after you've gone all through this. She walked in and told me that I was going to sit on a rocking chair on a porch and drool with my tongue out if I didn't turn around and get my act together. Well, that really wasn't what I wanted to hear that particular day. But it was hard because I was still on dialysis, and the closest place to go with rehab that you don't have to leave the facility is like Charlotte. So, they said, if we can get her off of dialysis, we can try, getting her to NHC. Well, luckily my kidneys heard that and they decided, yep, that's fine. We'll start working again. And they worked beautifully, and we haven't looked back since then. But it was how to stand up and how to walk and go from there. And so when I started at the rehab center, they asked me what my one goal was. And I said, I want to be in Hawks Cay, which is in the middle of the Keys, on June 6th, because Michael and I had planned a trip to go back. We had lost out in November because his sister died, and we had to drive from Hawks Cay, mile marker 61 in the Keys, to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And if you can drive that distance and not file papers with your loved one, you're doing all right. And so they said, well, pick another goal. What if you can't? No, that's my goal. Well, in June 6th, I was in Hawks Cay with my husband in the room that we had planned. And literally we could walk out of our room and walk right into the pool. And it was a fabulous few days. It's a situation that you have to really pay attention to what's happening around you. And one of the things Mary mentioned, that I'm very well educated, but after you have COVID, nobody thinks that you've got a brain. I mean, you're not part of your medical care. You can't put in your 10 cents worth. Your family wants to turn around and put you in bubble wrap, and no, they'll take everything. You just stay there. We're so thrilled you're alive and you're here with us. You can't do anything. And it drove me crazy.
TC,
Yes,
can I interrupt just a second?
sure.
We had a question, and before you get back into the therapy and the next section,
Yeah.
a question was, who was your cardiologist and how many days were you in the hospital?
I went in on February 14th, and I was discharged the first time April 1st.
Okay.
And my cardiologist is Dr. Hewitt. He's part of the Lexington Medical Group.
Okay. And one other question while we're in this area is, have you experienced much brain fog?
No, that was the interesting thing about it. In fact, I've had an MRI actually. They wanted to see what was up. None of my cognitive skills went. When I went to go write again, I had to really work at writing again for a few times. It was just like, getting back on a bike and practicing, writing. But no, all my cognitive skills were fine. It was more emotional for me. And in fact, when we went to rehab, I was there, and on Sunday, April 18th was actually the first day I had been outside since I had my attack on the 14th. And my husband rolled me outside, and it was beautiful. And of course, it's pollen season, so everything in the world in South Carolina is yellow. And so, but I spent a couple of hours outside, and it was wonderful. It was warm, it was sunny. It was just what I needed. And by then I was like on 2% oxygen, had a little oxygen tank that I could take with me on a wheelchair. So it was really wonderful. Well, the next day, Dr. Greenhouse came in to see me, and he said, how are you feeling? And Michael happened to stop by before I went for office hours. And I said, well, you know what? My chest really feels a little tight today. I don't know what it is, but it just feels tight. And he said, well, that's interesting, because he said the occupational therapist noted that your oxygen saturation level was down, and that's a little bit of a concern. And I said, well, and he said, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to send you over to the emergency room. Now, after you spend all that amount of time, you don't want to hear you going back to the emergency room. You don't want to hear you going anywhere near a hospital. But he said, no, don't worry. You'll be back by lunch. Ha, 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 ha. The only thing that would have made that better is if he told me he was from the government, he was here to help me. I mean, that's the only other thing I can think of. But come to find out, they thought I might have pneumonia, but I definitely had a blood clot in my left lung. Blood clots, again, another side effect of COVID. So they put me on the heparin and that, then we do, this whole series, and I'm in the hospital now for another 10 days till they can get everything set, straightened out and done and everything like that. And of course, they, tell me that, they'll send me back to NHC and we'll go from there. And once we've got it. And I can't remember the drug that they put me on. It's the blood thinner that you can't eat any greens and you can't use this and you can't use that and everything like that. So I was miserable because of course, all the things that I like to have, I couldn't have. And of course I had to be tested like every day or every other day because it had to be a certain level. And by then I had been so poked and pulled that literally I had 6'4" lab techs on their knees taking blood out of my knuckles so that they could do and give me every day, because I'm not a great stick. There's only so many places you can stick, and if you've got heparin in one arm, you can't use that arm to take. And I was just getting to be kind of miserable with the whole thing. But finally they told me that I could go back to NHC, except my insurance company Aetna said, no, you can't, you have to go home. And of course, then it started the panic with my daughter saying she can't go home because she's going to be all by herself. What is she going to do? She's on oxygen, she's this, she's that, and everything like that. Well, of course, they tell you, don't worry, we get oxygen delivered to the house. We'll get nursing services to come and take blood every day. We'll put her on, physical therapy, and don't worry, it will be fine. Of course, once I get home, I'm thrilled to be home because now it's the end of April. It's sunny and warm. I can leave my back door open and it's wonderful to be home. But I am now all by myself because my husband, in order to cope with this whole situation, booked every possible day he could to do dentistry. Anybody needed him, anybody wanted him to work extra or take on a special case, my husband turned around and just, that was it. It was his way of coping. He and the dog, that was it. So I was by myself, and that was not good either, because everybody else had a life. So I'm sitting there and I can only go like 20 feet because that's as far as my oxygen tube will go. Well, in the meantime, Dr. Stuck turned around, and after our last time with the emergency room on May 5th, she met with me the next day for 2.5 hours with Michael and went over every report and what it was and stuff like that. And I didn't realize Lexington Medical and Prisma now share records. So if you have a test done in Lexington, the doctor from Prisma can see the results instantaneously. So she had everything that the doctor in the emergency room at Lexington with the COVID-19 heart and all that sort of stuff, she could immediately react to that situation and what she wanted to do and everything like that. But she actually took the 2.5 hours out of her schedule. I wasn't booked to go. I just said, I would like to go with, and she immediately cleared her book so that I could come in and talk with her. And by the way, I've made her a Paul Harris Fellow as one of my fellows this year because of the work that she actually has done to keep me on track, getting better and stuff like that. Well, one of the problems is my husband and I are both control freaks. The only people we can't control is each other. We're movers, we're shakers. I've built libraries and dams and worked with millions of dollars and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, as I said, none of that counts. You've lost that ability in people's minds to be able to do this, which makes it very hard. So when I wanted to do something, my husband immediately, said, Don't be a director. Don't try to tell people what to do. Just sit there and relax and I'll take care of everything. I didn't want him to take care of everything because not only was he doing everything, and Sydney can tell you the terrible story about miscommunication. When we had beepers, when my daughter was a teenager and we had beepers, if you wanted your kid to call you right away, you put your phone number in and then you put 911 after it because you want him to know it's important to call me. Well, Sydney thinks it's, my God, it's like, you know, something terrible is happening. We've all got to go. So of course, in the meantime, my daughter, my son-in-law, Sydney, everybody comes. And of course, they've called the police and they've called the emergency squad. And I found out then that you can't say you don't want to go to the hospital. You don't have a choice. If they say you're going to the hospital, you're going to the hospital. Well, I wasn't a real happy camper about that. But one of the things that happened was they took me off of the oxygen and I ended up sitting in the emergency room in a wheelchair for the whole day. And of course, in the meantime, they're asking, will somebody come and pick you up? Well, Michael won't leave patients. So I know that's a, you know, don't ask that question. But my kids were so upset at the time about what was happening and why it was happening. They said, no, that's it. She can't come with us. We're not picking her up. Find a place for my mother to stay. They actually thought that I was having a mental breakdown and they had lives. They're important. They have things to do. Don't bother me. Go somewhere else, do something else, but she can't. She's having a nervous breakdown. And we just want to send her somewhere. So of course, the little girl from the psychiatry department upstairs in Lexington Medical said, well, we have these 3 or 4 options. And I'm going like, I don't want to go to an institution. That's not what I'm looking for. And this is one of the problems that the COVID creates, is this PTSD, which, you know, we've heard about with so many veterans and everything like that. But they don't look at it from the COVID standpoint that so many people have had these issues of trying to cope, come back into the family and go from there. So again, I called on Dr. Stuck and literally Sydney drove me to her office and I went in to see her and I cried and I said, I don't know what you can do, but I'm going to lose my family. They think I've had a nervous breakdown and I just can't cope. I can't understand. They won't listen to me, that, you know, and everything like that. And I'm crying. And she said, you're not crazy and you haven't had a mental breakdown, but you do have PTSD. And she said, it's a situation that because the family has coped for so long trying to do all this with you, that they don't realize that they're going through it too, and they don't really know how to react to it. As I said, my sister-in-law died November 16th and February 14th, I was declared dead for that short period of time. It was a real kick in the gut to my husband. How do you lose the 2 most significant women in his life, other than children and grandchildren, to move forward? And this is a guy who doesn't really show a lot of emotion as things go by. So she said, I want you to see a psychiatrist, but I want to send you to a psychiatrist that understands PTSD. Just don't go to anybody, because we found out as we talked about it, and that I also went to see Dr. Gaskins here in Columbia, is that a lot of families have had the same issue and they take their loved one to somebody, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, who doesn't know what this is, who doesn't know how to treat it. And so they turn around and welcome to a lot of prescriptions, and you sit there and you're quiet and you're good, but it doesn't solve the problem. And that was one of the things that we really discussed, was the fact, well, how do I get back to where I was? And then I kind of remembered why I was happily married for so many years. Was I would let Michael do and go and everything like that. And a lot of times I would just pull it back and let him do it. And then I'd go out and just do what was necessary and didn't make a big to-do about it. And we both loved each other's strengths, and we knew that each other could go out and conquer the world. But that loss of me for just that short period of time has made him so protective. I mean, you know, he's constantly like holding my hand. Come on, let's go. We'll go together. I missed you all day while I was at the office. I mean, we already had a loving and caring relationship, but now it's become more intense because he was so afraid of losing me. And you know, that's really made it hard. And now we've pretty much managed to, we can spend all weekend together watching the football games, and it's great and it's fabulous because now we understand. And actually, Dr. Gaskins had said, well, I would love to have your family come in. I said, my family won't come in because my family isn't that kind of family. My family is terrifically supportive, but they're not going to sit here and listen to you on how they could interact better with me because that's not who the type of people they are. And, you know, so that kind of made it hard, but it gave me, between Dr. Stuck and Dr. Gaskins, gave me the tools that I needed to come back home and realize what was happening. And so that's one of the reasons why Dr. Stuck got the Paul Harris Fellow. And I
Keith,
don't, yes.
let me interrupt again. We're running short on time, and I hate to cut
Sorry.
this off because it's just wonderful. There is a question in here that someone wanted to know if you remember hearing your husband or others when you were under. And when you were under, were you in a coma? Did they put you in a coma?
They put me in a coma. And no, I did not hear Michael when he grabbed my arm and told me that he loved me, not to leave him. I did not hear that. But he claims that the hearing is the last thing that goes. So even though you're not aware of it, a lot of people have asked me if I seen a big light or hands or anything like that. And I said, no. But I do remember raising my hand at one time, and at the time I was in so much pain, I was asking them to let me go. And my daughter said, if it were up to me, I would have let you go because that's what you wanted. You were in so much pain. And Michael turned to her and he said, no, your mother, as soon as we get things under control and everything, it'll be fine. They'll make her comfortable. She won't be in pain anymore, and we'll go from there. Because I had all the medical directives only because I'm a rule follower. I mean, I've got to tell you, I have a medical directive, and I have who should take care of me and make decisions. And I trust my husband enough that I would let him make those decisions, and he did. So I mean, so that's made a big difference. I do remember as I became more conscious, especially once they took the tube out, then I could, you know, be more aware of what was going on and stuff like that, because they allowed me to come up to a level where I was more aware of what was going on. But that's why I say, I don't remember from the 14th until way into March what was happening.
Have you had your the other COVID shots and the booster?
Okay, as soon as the doctor said I could, I had my second shot, and that was September 25th. I have to wait to either, well, they moved it out from 6 months down to 5 months. So my booster shot I can get anytime from February 25th on, which I will do. Now, Dr. Hewitt, my cardiologist, said I didn't even need the second shot because he thought my antibodies were so great with having one shot and having had COVID. He said, you don't need the second shot. I kind of got the second shot out of the fact that I knew I was going down to St. Martin to visit Sydney, and I just didn't want a bureaucrat who sat there and looked at, well, I see you had one shot. Why don't you have the second shot? It's been more than 21 days. So I figured that would just take care of it. But then, of course, they've added the booster since then. So I just have to wait and turn around until the time is expired, and I can go get the boosters. But that's one of the other things is I really feel that if I hadn't had the first shot, I might not have been building up antibodies at the time I was attacked. And I have no idea where I got it from. The kids weren't coming over for dinner. Michael was going out and doing the shopping and going to work, and stuff like that. So I wasn't going anywhere that I thought I would be in harm's way. But go from there. So all the money I invested in those Rotary cloth masks, I won't be wearing the cloth masks anymore. We've moved up to the small surgicals, and now that we're going down to St. Martin, we're going to probably get some N95s for home use. Michael has those in the office all the time, but we'll order some of our own.
How do you feel now? What's your general health now?
Oh, okay. Well, there's two sides to health. I really feel good mentally where I'm at. I'm back to, doing things like this and reading. It's time to start doing taxes, and all that sort of stuff. So, go from there. So my mental place is really good. My health, as you can tell by my voice, it's still a little bit on the side where it gets tired. I have gone to a speech therapist, and of course, it's known as you need to rest your voice occasionally, and make sure you drink lots of fluid and everything like that. And so I'd say that my health is good. I'm probably going to have knee replacement surgery, so that'll be this year's fun. But that's just the 75 years, of being a skier and an athlete and everything like that. You just wear them down, and the medicine wasn't as good back then, when you got hurt. So I probably will be looking at that.
There
But
was a
other than that,
time when there was a time when you were on a weight loss program. Are you still doing that, or have you?
Yeah, I really, one of the problems I've had now that my knees have started to bother is I'm not exercising like I should. So I have put on a little bit of weight, but now I know where I'm going and what I'm doing, and it's making, and I have kept some of the weight off. So that's been good, because everybody wanted to eat. After you have COVID, it's like everybody wants you to eat because you need to have all the protein and vitamins and everything like that. So, and Michael does make some good cheesy scrambled eggs in the morning, so, so, but in fact, he's really become a great cook. So, and he loves to grill. Thank God for South Carolina. Although he realized the other night, you shouldn't go out to the grill in your sandals. There's snow on it.
Well, TC, because of time, we're going to have to wrap it up. If anybody has any questions that you want to ask, there's one here about losing your taste and smell. Go ahead and put them in there.
Okay, I did not lose my taste or smell.
Okay. And I'll be able to send TC, when I send her the video tonight, I can send her your questions. If you want to send me the questions, I'll forward them on to her. She's very open about that and very candid about answering the questions, which we appreciate that. So TC, thank you. I'm so glad you're here with us today. Good seeing you. Great presentation. Thank you for sharing, because we all have questions about COVID. It's
okay, great. Okay, see you all at the district meeting.
Yes, we'll see you in March.